ready. I think he hung up. Hang on, I lost Ernie.
For the special meeting of the Folsom City Council on Monday, June 15th, 2020, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Kozlowski,
Here.
Sheldon,
Here.
Howell,
Here.
and Aquino.
Here, and if you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'd call the first item, please.
Your first item this evening is item number 1, filling council vacancy by appointment and/or direction to staff. Presenting this evening will be City Attorney Steve Wong.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Stephen Wong, City Attorney. For the benefit of the public, former council member Roger Gaylord resigned from the Folsom City Council on June 10th, 2020. Mr. Gaylord was elected in 2016 for a 4-year term, and his term ends after the November 2020 general municipal election. Mr. Gaylord's resignation prior to November created a vacancy on the City Council for the remainder of his term, and it is staff recommendation that the vacancy be filled for the remaining 5 months until a new council member.
Excuse me for 1 second. Should we ask him to mute? Okay.
Until a new council member is elected. The Folsom City Charter provides that in the event of a vacancy on the City Council due to a member's resignation, the method to fill the vacancy shall be as provided by law. And the state law authorizes the City Council to fill a council vacancy by either appointing a replacement or by calling a special re-election. The person appointed or elected to fill the vacancy holds the office of the unexpired term of the former incumbent. In this case, the unexpired term continues until a new council member is elected in November. The person appointed or elected to fill the vacancy must be eligible to hold a seat on the City Council, which means that person must, 1, be a registered voter, 2, reside in the city of Folsom, and 3, not hold any city office or city employment. If the council desires to fill the vacancy by appointment, the council may nominate anyone eligible to hold a council seat or choose from the next top vote getter from the last municipal election in 2018, or solicit nomination from the general public. If the council wishes to fill the vacancy through a special election, then the special election must be called within 60 days of the vacancy, and the election must be held at the next regularly scheduled election, not less than 114 days from the call of the special election. This means that the special election would actually fall on the same date as the general municipal election scheduled for November 3rd, 2020. So as indicated in the staff report, the City Council has the option to adopt special requirements in a special election to fill council vacancy if it so desires. The cost of holding a special election varies from approximately $418,000 to $837,000, depending on the number of ballots to be printed and mailed and the staffing costs to conduct the election. So due to the cost and the fact that the special election would fall on the same date of the regularly scheduled general municipal election, it is staff's recommendation that the council vacancy be filled by appointment. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the council for Mr. Wong?
I don't have any questions. I've been there, done that.
I don't have any questions. It's all very clear.
Vice Mayor Sheldon, do you have any questions for Mr. Wong?
He might be muted.
I'm not sure. Okay.
Vice Mayor Sheldon, do you have any question for me, sir?
Are you asking me if I have any questions?
Correct. Do you have any questions?
No, not at this time, not on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and open up for public comment at this time. Madam Clerk, do we have some comments that have been submitted?
You do. You have 2 comments that were submitted with the request to have them read into the record. So the first is from Michael Burkhard, and Michael writes, "Dear members of the council, I applaud your efforts to maintain the integrity of the council by holding Mr. Gaylord accountable for his actions. Folsom residents deserve to be represented by a council that is transparent in its interest and whose members are personally invested in the future success of this great city. It's unfortunate that some citizens do not see those basic principles as being important. Thank you, Michael Burkhard." And your second comment this evening is from Paul Keast, and Paul writes, "It has come to my attention one of the current council members has resigned, and filling that seat requires a decision on the process for replacement. I would like to suggest reasons, criteria, and a process to select a replacement on a temporary basis. The reasons for the need to replace the council member are: 1, an odd number of council members ensures tie votes will not occur. 2, in the last election, there was a concern in the community that a slate was running. Having a 5th member helps to mitigate that concern. You and the community believe in a fair and transparent governing process." The criteria: I would suggest you go back to the 2018 council election candidates and approach the candidates that secured at least a percentage of votes from the election. Have the city clerk contact them and see if they would be willing to be potentially appointed to the council for the remaining term. The candidates that agree would be the replacement candidates. These are reasonable candidates given their interest in running for the council and the fact they received votes from the community. The process: selection would be the method used for other council items. Each member has a vote, and the votes are taken until one candidate is selected. This voting is run by the clerk and is televised for the residents. Please consider this process as one that can allow our city to continue to work effectively given this difficult time. Regards, Paul Keast, resident of Mormon Street.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience tonight who would like to address the council? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to go ahead and try to do this as methodically as we can, so I'm just going to ask a couple questions of the council. Is there anybody who believes that we should leave this seat vacant until the new council members are elected in November?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement on that. Is there anybody who believes that we should spend $500,000 to hold a special election?
Absolutely not.
Let me get back to you about that. No, I'm kidding. Of course not.
Okay, so we're all in agreement that we should fill the seat and do it by appointment. I'll go ahead and entertain any comments. I think it would be helpful to maybe talk about the sort of characteristics we would like to see in the appointee.
I'm happy to start.
Okay,
I'm the only member of the council that was serving on the council the last time we had to do this. Given the last time this happened, there was still 9 months remaining on the term. We had a number of very qualified people that expressed interest in it, many of whom had spent, in most cases, many, many years as a planning commissioner or a parks commissioner, or having, having a fairly significant understanding about how the processes work. And basically what we did, we had all of those individuals that were interested submit a letter of interest along with their qualifications for fulfilling the remainder of the term. And then we invited them, if they wanted to come and speak at a council meeting. I think we gave them 5 minutes or something to talk to the council members. And then the council basically made the decision as to who was going to fill the remainder of that term. I would like to see a similar process happen here, and I think we could do that at the next council meeting. I've spoken to, and I'm gonna admit flat out right here, because this is such a short remaining term, with everything else that is going on, I think the citizens of Folsom would be better served by somebody who already understands the processes. And when I say that, I mean my preference would be to have a former council member with no intentions of running again fill the remainder of that term. I understand from talking to Sarah that that Eric King would not say no if we asked him. And I had a similar conversation with John Mesner, who happens to be the person who filled the remainder of the term the last time this happened, and he also did say no. Either of those two people would be more than acceptable, because they have remained engaged in the community. They know what's going on. They know how the council functions. They understand all the regional boards and committees. And bless you, either of them, or, you know, I had a comical conversation with Andy. I think, you know, Andy would do it if we begged him. I don't think it's his preference, but, you know, that's kind of where I'm coming from right now.
Okay, so Mr. King is not available due to family commitments.
Okay.
Yeah. Councilmember Kozlowski, you have some things you want to add?
I think sooner is better than later, so I agree with you that whatever process we choose, we should wrap it up by Tuesday at our next meeting, or at our next meeting.
Yeah, and we did
Not
do it
tomorrow,
quickly last
next
time.
week, yeah. A brief, you know, letter of interest probably makes some sense, just to give everybody an opportunity. I think there are some, you know, we are, as always, rich with skills here in Folsom and really talented people. So regardless of who ultimately we appoint, I think we're going to be well served. And I don't think that I don't agree that it absolutely has to be a former council person, but to your point, I think some experience and some depth of past involvement in the community is essential. And be that on one of our commissions or in some wider way in the community, because there's lots of people that have, you know, that are very engaged with what we do here, even though they may not have served recently on a commission per se.
And the other thing that I do want to add about the commitment that John Mesner made, at the time that we had the discussion, he made a commitment that he would not then or ever run for city council. At the end of the 9 months that he served, we were all actually, frankly, a bit disappointed, because I think most of the council and many of the residents in the city of Folsom would have liked it if he had considered, but he made that commitment that he was not going to run, and then therefore take advantage of having served for a short time as a council member, and thereby be able to run as an incumbent. So.
Yeah, that probably raises a question for our city attorney. While it may be one of many criteria that we consider, you know, what their political aspirations are overall, is that something that we can consider, what their stated intention is to run for public office in the future? Because it seems like that's not really something you can pin somebody down to in any legal way.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Kozlowski. That's an excellent question. The answer is yes and no. So allow me to explain. Yes, you can certainly consider that as a criteria, but no, you cannot hold that person to that commitment. It is everyone's constitutional right to run for public office.
Sure. Yeah, I think, though, the point that we may be making collectively, and I will make personally, is that what we don't want to do is put our finger on the scale for this November directly. So it would be a preference rather than an absolute requirement for me, at least. Aside from that, I think, you know, we have the world has had quite a bit of turmoil lately, and this may be a great opportunity to look a little deeper into the batting lineup, so to speak, to find somebody that can help us manage our way through a whole manner of different issues that are pertinent at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Sheldon, do you have any comments to add?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of comments. Number one, I participated in the last time we did this when John Mesner was selected by the council. I was a park commissioner trying out for council, and I went through the process with about maybe half a dozen people. And John Mesner was selected by the council. I feel he did a very good job in the remaining time that he filled. So that process worked. But what we did at that time, we allowed the people in town that had a feeling to want to fill that position the opportunity to apply. I think tonight, if we make a judgment tonight, we're rushing to judgment.
I don't want to do
We don't need to do that. This four of us are pretty compatible. I doubt it to be very many, if any, tied in the next month or so. I think the city should go up front. I know we all knew we had this, and we might have told people that this was happening, but the city does not really know, because of other things going on in the city, what we're doing tonight. And I think we should make this public and adjustable to anybody that meets the basic criteria of residency and registration. I don't think we should make a judgment tonight. I think we should hear what we see. There are people out there that we have long-time commissioners, and we have maybe very surprised ex-councilmen that want to try. And then we have a lot of executive talent in town. So I think they all should be allowed the opportunity to make a 3-minute speech of their qualifications, submit an application, and then we review it. There's no reason to rush to judgment tonight.
Okay, thank you, Ernie. So, Mr. Wong, in terms of a timeline, if we decide that we want to put something out there letting them know that we have decided to fill the vacancy, anybody who is interested should submit something to the city clerk. If we were to say, submit something by, let's say, noon next Tuesday, or I'm just going to throw that out as an example, what is the process then? The council deliberates and hears all that sort of stuff in public, and then we could make a decision as quickly as that same night, or?
That's what we did the last time.
That's correct. You may do so.
Okay. So what are you guys feeling like is a reasonable, would you like to have somebody by next Tuesday? Are you aiming for the first meeting in July? What do
I'd
you
like
think?
somebody by next Tuesday.
Okay.
I'd like to make the decision next Tuesday so that the person's got a couple of weeks. Because sometimes I don't know what day the 4th of July falls on this year, but there have been years when we didn't have a meeting that week.
The 4th of July falls on a Saturday this year.
Okay.
And Madam Mayor, if the council were to select a replacement council member by appointment on the 23rd, that person will be sworn in on the July 7th council meeting.
Okay.
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 July 14th.
Second
I think it's
Tuesday.
July 14th,
I have the
actually.
wrong calendar, July 14th council
Okay,
meeting.
okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
No, and
That is
I hope that, that Ernie didn't misunderstand. I wasn't suggesting we make a decision tonight at all.
So are you fine with that, Ernie, if we put a notice out tomorrow letting folks know that we are going to fill the vacancy by appointment and ask them if they're interested to submit, a bio or just a letter of interest, whatever, to the city clerk? And then we will look at those next Tuesday during our June 23rd meeting. Does that work for you, Ernie?
Yeah, and I would like to caveat to allow them to speak.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
we can
agree.
do that.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think Kerry knows how it worked last time. It worked well.
Yes.
We got a good candidate, did the job well. I think we could do that again, but we should not rush to judgment.
Okay. So, Krista, since you're the one that,
I agree.
Go ahead, Ernie, sorry.
I agree with Carrie's recommendation as far as the time frame, and then but we have to get the word out to the people of this town and let them apply if they care to.
Okay.
I
So,
say we rent one of those airplanes and skywrite it.
so Krista, since you're going to be the one collecting the letters of interest and distributing those to us, why don't you suggest a time frame?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It depends in part on if you want the list of candidates included within your agenda packet, your staff report, because that will be published, normally it's published the Thursday before, which is 3 days away.
Yeah, I don't think that's
And
necessary to
so,
you.
No, I'm happy to receive them. You know, I mean, if you could, if they're due by noon, say on next Tuesday, which gives people a full week, if you could email them to us after you scan them, so that we've at least got a little bit of time before the council meeting to look at them, rather than accept them or not see them until the council meeting. I'm gonna guess, I'll be surprised, frankly, if you get more than a dozen.
well, it's really the council's decision on how much lead time you'd like to be able to consider applicants. So I think Monday might give you a little bit more time, but that's your
What if we
call.
said maybe 5 PM on Monday?
That's fine with me.
I'm fine with that.
Does that work for you, Ernie?
That would give us time also to verify eligibility through residency
Yeah, that's a
and
good- that's a
registered
good point.
voter.
Yep.
So we could at least vet that and then pass the communication on to the
Good
council.
thinking, I had forgotten about you having to check that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I would suggest to the mayor that we give them between 3 and 5 minutes, depending upon how many people actually express interest. Because if it was a dozen people, that's, you know, that's an hour worth of time spent on that.
Well, I think we need to decide now because we want people to be able to prepare their remarks, so
I'm fine with 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Let's
Even
just
if it
go with
takes
5
us an hour
Okay.
or a little more, that's
Okay.
fine with me.
Okay. So do we need a motion to this effect?
Yes, we do. If you don't
Okay.
mind,
I
I would
will-
like a motion to continue this matter to the 23rd.
Okay,
I'll continue it to the 23rd, given the conversation that we just had about submission before 5 o'clock on Monday, the 22nd, that the clerk's office is able to verify the voter information for however many we receive, and that will allow them to speak at the council meeting. And we'll have to make sure that we have adequate social distancing for, you know, again, I think it'll be less than a dozen people,
We'll set up an additional seating area outside of the chamber, just in
which I
case.
see we have right now,
Yeah.
so.
okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and
I
second.
second.
Okay, Mr. Kozlowski seconded, but any other discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kozlowski,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
and Aquino.
Yes. Okay, and this evening I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Can I,
Yeah,
can
go
I make
ahead.
just one comment before you do that? I just wanted to say, you know, we were here tonight to discuss replacing Roger Gaylord. And while I just wanted to say something nice about Mr. Gaylord, he, you know, found his way into a lot of discussions where he became a bit of a lightning rod. And we didn't always agree on everything, he and I or anybody. But I will say that he was methodical in opening up the discussion to a lot of pathways and people who hadn't been deeply involved in council activity in the past. And regardless of any particular policy positions or things that he was pursuing, opening up that discussion is always a good thing, and I applaud Roger for doing that. So he's got an opportunity to live out of town that was irresistible, and I will miss him as a neighbor. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Well said, thank you. This evening, I'm going to adjourn the meeting in memory of Folsom resident Nicole Baldessar Wood, who passed away 3 weeks ago today from plasma cell leukemia. Nikki was a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend to many. She and I worked together many, many years ago as student assistants in the athletics department at Sac State, and happily reconnected in Folsom a couple of years ago. We send prayers and best wishes to her husband James, daughter Sophia, and son David, who are here with us in the chamber tonight. May she rest in peace. We are adjourned.